And so I think where we were caught off guard is by a large master plan that includes lots of designs that aren't really in keeping with preservation. But our big concern is it being over-programmed, combined with the encroachment onto the passive use green spaces of those great lawns, which we feel are sacrosanct. Those are not compromisable. We don't want walking paths. We don't want crushed gravel. We don't want programs. Certainly don't want parking there. We want grass. Every square foot of that at some point in the year is used by individuals or groups. But we think the city should focus any taxpayer's money on fixing Drayton and Whitaker. That's a traffic engineering mistake from 60 or 70 years ago. Those need to be streetscapes with that encourage mobility types for all users, for pedestrians, for bicyclists. And many of those users are, guess what, visitors to Forsyth Park.
Oh, what's up, folks? Good evening. It's John, Chuck, and Carrie back for another week of our weekly Better Savannah Discussions show, podcast, whatever you want to call it. We are still following progress on a lot of different fronts, including the Weeping Time property, which is under its archaeological review as mandated by City Council. We're also following the potential for the announcement for the House District 165 special election, and of course, the hiring of a new city manager. All things we'll be talking about in the upcoming weeks. If you support independent progressive policy here at the state and local level, you've obviously found us for this discussion tonight on a really big hot topic locally. But there's a couple ways you can support what we're trying to do here. First thing you do is like this stream, share it to your own feed, so all of your friends can see it. We are, I think we had almost 10,000 people, kind of see this event, advertised the last 5 days or so. So I'm hoping that we can get a large live audience and of course a large replay audience as council weighs this decision coming up. Next thing you do, if you really are following our page regularly, you understand what we're trying to do here, please go to our website and join us, www.bettersavannah.org. Click the donate membership button and commit to becoming a member of Better Savannah. You'll get access to our private members group. We see a little bit behind the scenes of how we produce some of the things we're working on, and bonus content, starting hopefully with this House District 165 special election that's supposed to come in. Tonight, though, we're going to have a large roundtable discussion. And I was thinking, John, this is like the first time we've tried to do this, right?
Yes.
I remember going back to the primaries last year. I think it was County Commission District 5 and House District 163. There's like 5 candidates. And I was like, there's just no way it's going to work with these 5 people on it once in Zoom. And it never really tends to work out very well. So with that in mind, I'm hoping that this one does, because it's, such an important issue. We've got 3 representatives from the Friends of Forsyth Garden Club project, from the Trustees Garden Club, rather. But they are the Friends of Forsyth redesign project. We have Meb Ryan is the co-chair of this park redesign project, along with Eleanor Rangos. We're joined by them tonight, along with Melinda Bergen, who is the first vice president of the Garden Club itself. So we've got strong representation from the people who came up with these plans and ideas, as well as representation from the three adjoining, and closest neighborhood associations, so to speak, directly, around the park. This is the Victorian Neighborhood Association, which is led by Ryan Madson. If you follow our show, our page, you saw him on a show, I think it was actually 2 weeks ago, John, that we had him on after we had former Senator Regina Thomas. You can go back and see that show as well on the page. We're also joined tonight by Matthew Hallett, who's a board member of the Downtown Neighborhood Association and is the liaison to the Downtown Business Association. And we're further joined by Chris Shomo, who's a board member of the Thomas Square Neighborhood Association. So we're going to have a lively discussion. We're going to start off with, kind of a good presentation, so to speak, from, folks from the Garden Club for about 10 minutes, and then go through the neighborhood organizations. And then hopefully we'll have a good section of question and answers at the end. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to John, our founder of Better Savannah, John McMasters. Take it away, John.
Thank you, Chuck.
Oh, wait, one more thing. I'm sorry. I forgot to mention. We're also joined by Alderwoman at Large, Keisha Gibson Carter, from Post One. I'm so sorry about that, Keisha. You came in late. I forgot to recognize you here. Just, we've had all these discussions have had a representative from the city. So we're having the at-large representative for Post One here on tonight to observe and answer any questions as it regards to the city. So with that, John, please do take it away. Okay.
Okay. I'm so thankful for everyone who've joined us tonight and take time out of their schedules to talk about this ambitious and important project. Chuck's absolutely correct. We've brought all the key players in this conversation. They have all collaborated very well and extensively, discussing this. There's been over 2,000 surveys conducted, 5 Zoom presentations with a city alderman involved in each one, hundreds of person-to-person surveys conducted in the park on the weekends. I was there, I participated. And then of course, there's just been really, significant social media discussions on various pages and platforms. And we appreciate all that dialogue. I want to confess that for the last 24 years, I've lived a block away from Forsyth Park. So my family spent a lot of time there. We, richly enjoy it. So you're stuck with me as your moderator. We're going to, for our viewing audience, so that you understand, we're going to start with the Friends of Forsyth talking about their concepts and what they've learned from all the feedback that's been received and continuing to be received. Then we're going to go to the 3 neighborhood officials of the neighborhood organizations. And then we'll have a chance for some back and forth questions and answers. I want to end my comments and get us started, but one final thought I picked out from the Savannian, Jim Marikis's ambitious, wonderful new journalism product. John Bennett wrote a fabulous piece on this subject. We've all benefited by it. And the one quote that I want to share with us before we get started is this quote: "My research revealed that many people have been arguing about what should and should not happen in Forsyth Park for hundreds of years." With that, Friends of Forsyth, take it away.
Hi, everybody. I'm Meg Bryan, co-chair of the Trustees Garden Club Forsyth Park Project. And I will just start by thanking you for this opportunity, John and team, because we're really excited to talk about this tonight. I know that if anyone's been following this, it's been a lot of lively discussion. And we welcome that, because when we started this process several years ago, we realized that in order to protect the park and the things that we as Savannians love about it, a professional master plan, ideally, hopefully down the road, adopted by City Council, is the best way to ensure that all the things that we really love about the park are protected. Now, when we look down the road, we can see, and John Bennett's article was really fantastic, because I think it really explained how, in some ways, how the park has changed, and there's been lots of discussion about it over the years. I mean, there used to be a parking lot right in front of where the band shell is, and the band shell was plopped in there with not a lot of community engagement or discussion. There have been lots of changes. So when we initiated this project, the master plan project, we knew that reaching out to the community was going to be the biggest part of it. And it is, and it's a huge part of the budget for the project. And I think that it's working, because while we have a lot of different opinions, we are getting opinions, and that's what we need to hear. So these, the two collections of ideas that the public has been looking at are just that, ideas. I think there has been some, and maybe we haven't communicated it, well enough, that these are not plans that are definitely going to be adopted, and it's not a choice of one or the other. And this is not something where shovels are going to be put in the ground, once it's adopted by City Council. This is really a blueprint for the next 50 years, taking into account preservation of trees, improvement of drainage, things that everybody, I think, is on the same page about, but then also finding ways to respond to what we know are going to be increased pressures on the park from increased population in Savannah, increased tourism, and increased SCAD use. We know that SCAD is getting ready to have a large, dormitory complex right on the park. So taking all of these things into effect, and then also looking at the historic integrity of the park and looking towards possibly, restoring some of that, all this has been overlaid onto these two sort of responses to the initial survey that we had. So this is not, as I've said, this is not shovels in the ground once it's adopted. This is a long-term blueprint for looking into the future. And another important point, I think, and there may be questions around this, the money that we have raised as a garden club for this project is only for the master plan document that includes many, many things in addition to whatever final design comes off the drafting table. So it is a comprehensive set of guidelines for the city, so that if the city, we know that they have budgeted for improved lighting in Forsyth Park and are waiting for the master plan to implement that. So when the city has funds budgeted, we want to ensure that those funds are spent in accordance with the master plan. And we know that the city, if we have several ambitious projects ultimately identified in the plan, we know that the city doesn't have the budget to go right out and replace all the paving with pervious paving. We know that. So what we would love to see down the road is the formation of a public-private partnership, a nonprofit organization similar to the Central Park Conservancy and the Piedmont Park Conservancy that have been so successful in their communities in raising funds and increasing volunteerism to make those parks, help support those parks and enable them to function for today and tomorrow. So with that, I just want to hand it over to Eleanor if she has anything to add with that, and then we can move on. Eleanor?
Okay.
You're muted, I think.
Sorry, I'm sorry. You'd think I've learned by now. Nev alluded to the fact that this master plan is bigger than just the design that the community is engaged in right now. There are many, many pieces to this that have been being worked on for years, quite honestly, that all were needed in order to create a comprehensive master plan for the park. So a couple of examples of that are the first ever topographic survey of the park, which is crucial to any interventions in the park to fix the stormwater issue, or to put in any new pathways, or really any changes to the park. That is a crucial piece to have, and we have created that. The first ever comprehensive tree survey of the park. We have hired a certified arborist who actually was the city arborist for many years to go into the park and count every single tree, do a health assessment and measure it so that we actually know what trees are out there in the park and what their condition is, so that we can plan for replacing those trees over the next 50 years as they start to die off. Because as many people know, the canopy in downtown Savannah, all these lovely oaks were planted in the last 10 years of the 1800s. So they are beginning to age out, and we really need to have a plan for how to best come behind that and sustain this stunning canopy that is so important to the quality of life in Savannah. So that's another piece. A full lighting and maintenance plan for the park is another part of it. We've done a complete inventory of every single fixture in the park. And we've also done a timeline of the history in the park so that we can better understand the full history of the park and how it fits into the general overall context of what was going on over the last 200 plus years in the whole region. So there are a lot of pieces to this, and the design obviously is one that is the most visually apparent, if you will, but all of that has been done leading up to this part of the process. I think that's...
Okay. Meb, you have another member that wants to speak? I've got a couple of questions, so I can hold them.
You can go ahead, John, and start with your questions.
Okay. What do you say to, so many people said, leave the park alone. It's out there and it's substantial. So, I think saving the trees and planning for the future is a great point there. But what can you say to the people that said, leave the park alone?
I think what I would start by saying is, the park, there is, as we all know, a concerted effort and a petition. Don't leave Forsyth Park as it is. And I've actually, had coffee with Scott Center, and it's fine. But what I think that when people have that reaction, just don't do anything, it really prohibits thoughtful conversation about the things that probably might need to happen, replacing the pavement with pervious pavement. It's just, I think it's a little bit
naive.
Possibly. Yeah. Yes, I do.
That was my word, and it was quickly chosen, and I apologize.
Right. Well, what I think is that I don't want people to throw the baby out with the bathwater.
Sure.
Right. Like, I think that this is so much bigger than these designs, which are not plans. They are going to be changed. We have gotten so much feedback. We're so grateful for that. And so I think that is a very strong visceral reaction, which we understand because we are passionate about the park. Almost everybody in our club, that has worked on raising money to support this effort is, probably multi-generational Savannah and grew up, with the park. So we are not coming in and trying to change what people love. We've asked our team to just take a fresh look at it. How can we work to balance some of these areas out, possibly restore some historic integrity? If the community does not want to see, for example, let's just pick one thing, the playgrounds are a very, very divisive issue. We've gotten a lot of feedback on that. We're not ignoring that at all. So we're coming back with more options. So what I would say is don't throw out the baby with the bathwater. Let's have some focused conversation about what really,
Well, sure. That's why we're here. That's why we're here. And that is exactly what needs to happen. And
we'll go ahead and just do a couple more questions and then start with the neighborhood organization responses.
Okay. Thanks, Chuck. Meb, your website and Facebook page says that one of the principal goals is this master plan will lead hopefully to national park recognition of Forsyth Park. Is that, let's see what we're on here. Isn't that part of the goal?
That is one of the elements of our personal Trustees Garden Club stewardship plan for the park. That is not part of the master plan. That is not something that will go before City Council, though, since the city does own the park, the city would have to sign off on any sort of nomination of the park as a National Historic Landmark.
Okay, thank you. I've got to ask this question. If that status was granted and achieved, what bearing, if any, would that have on the Confederate monument in the park? Would that make it harder to handle, easier to handle, or no effect whatsoever?
No effect, really, no effect. The National Historic Landmark designation does not place any restrictions on altering the historic structure or removing it or painting it, what have you. It is primarily honorific, and it enables you to apply for certain competitive grants. Yeah. You know, it's local level laws that protect historic resources. So that's the short answer. Ellen Garrett, who's on our team, could answer more detailed questions later if you have them.
Okay, thanks. And trying to keep us on schedule and give everybody ample time. Let's hear from our first Neighborhood Association representative.
Thanks, John. Yep, thank you. Good to be here to talk about this. I just want to say that we have been in very productive conversations with Meb and Eleanor from the VNA side. Also, Thomas Square had a representative at the conversation we had over the weekend. So I think part of the goal here and the outcome really is for maybe the larger audience and for others to be privy to some of that conversation. And I think the tangible result of those conversations, and I hope Meb and Eleanor would agree, is that we are allies here. And we are, apart from those two master plans, which we came out in very strong opposition to those design proposals, we're very much in support of the other parts of the plan, which haven't been made public yet, but we're looking forward to seeing those. That would be the very important conservation of the tree canopy, ongoing maintenance and management, programming of the park, and things like lighting, things that are more humble, but we need to think about them intentionally, from a landscape design perspective, more holistically. The benches, do we need more benches? What kind of lighting do we have? What kind of surveillance? What security cameras do we have? What kind of message does that send? Public art and what role that plays on the different surfaces in the park. Maintenance of the tennis courts and basketball courts, perhaps expansion of some of that program. So we are totally in support of those. We definitely do not want to derail this process. We all want to move forward, in a productive way. I totally agree with what Meb said. We don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. Just because we don't like those design options doesn't mean that we can't agree on what comes next. And like I said, we're certainly in agreement on the conservation goals more generally.
Gotcha. Ryan, are you gonna are you gonna talk about the streets? Are you coming up?
I will. Yeah. I do want to address the issue of character and passive use. And I think what took a lot of us by surprise, we know this now, is that those two design proposals had a lot of changes, which of course encroached on the open space with the new perimeter path and the pathways on the central corridor with the alley, and that encroaches on the shaded areas. So we don't think that we should encroach on those great lawns. In fact, you might even argue that with increased population and use and more visitors, we would maybe move towards a more radically flexible and passive use to accommodate everyone. And what I would hate for us to do is for this to turn into the tipping point where Forsyth Park became another place of tourist consumption, a spectacle for visitors, people to come to a couple of times a year. No one wants to see it do that. I don't want to look back on this moment and say, wow, this is when we sold our soul yet again to tourism or to visitors. So maintaining passive use and the existing character, however we do that, is so important. And then the other big point that we raised in our letter, and which has been a central part of the conversation, and this isn't a critique of the trust of the Friends of Forsyth Park approach, or really a criticism of the plans as they are now. But that's Drayton and Whitaker Street, right? Redesigning Drayton and Whitaker to accommodate multiple mobilities, to make them safer, and to incorporate the streetscape both into the neighborhoods, downtown and Victorian, and into the park. Now that they were told that the streets couldn't really be included in the plan. And now we're finding out that they need to be included. It's really important. And that has very practical impacts on what we do inside the park. We don't need new surface parking in Forsyth Park if we have on-street parking on a redesigned Drayton and Whitaker. We don't need separate circulation for bicycles and joggers inside the park if we have a dedicated bicycle lane on Drayton and Whitaker. And there's other kind of safety benefits and quality of life benefits that will definitely come from redesigning those streetscapes. So we're glad that that is now percolated up to the top, and we are hoping that another part of this might be a proactive approach to redesigning Drayton and Whitaker and really promoting that with our city leadership. So yeah, I think those are the kind of top level things. You know, I want to just end by my part by saying that thanks for Meb and Eleanor and the rest for listening to our concerns. I think you felt that our detailed concerns about the two master plans are very important to pass along, and we hope that those will be those are being heard, and your design teams want to take those into account, and we will move forward as stakeholders on the second part of the master plan.
Excellent, thank you, Ryan.
Sure.
Very, very cogent, and I know the street issue did rise up to the top pretty quickly. Chris or Matthew, who wants to take a stab at this?
Well, I guess I could say something because I'm pretty much going to reiterate kind of what Ryan said. We're kind of on the same wavelength when it comes to this. And thank you, by the way, Eleanor, Meb, your entire team for doing this. I can feel the passion that you guys have for this park, and it is amazing. And it's interesting because like all the feedback that we've gotten, you know, people are really showing that they're really passionate about the park too, which is great because we can now take that energy and, you know, drive it into a direction that everybody can agree upon, and, you know, just really get some more community involvement, even though I know you all have been doing that like crazy already. But I know that we can reach out and even get more involvement in on it. I'm particularly happy that we're talking about the streets because I'm sick of it being kind of like a gauntlet for people trying to cross, you know, into the park. Now the city's been doing some things like adding the lights with the crosswalks, but it's still a very scary place to have so many pedestrians and so many vehicles coming through. So just by putting like a bike lane in there, supplying some more parking on the side, I mean, heck, we might be able to get rid of all parking lots in Forsyth Park, more green space, if we have that parking along the sides of those streets. I know some people are going to be like, I don't know about lowering the speed limit and everything because I want to get down fast. I mean, it's a historic area. We got to understand that there's going to be so many pedestrians down there, and we got to look after them before the vehicles. So that I think is one of the main points that I wanted to push is really looking at those streets to get that parking in the bike lane and get that part in there. But as far as the plans, thank you. Yeah, definitely, you know, let's continue to work on that as you know, a whole team, and we'll get this done. Thank you.
Thanks, Chris. And Chris, you are the Thomas Square Neighborhood Association president, is that?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. Matthew, you're with Downtown Neighborhood Association. You guys signed on to the letter of observation and comment. What's your institution's current perspective?
Sure. Well, we once again we surveyed all of our board members separately. So we encouraged all of our board members to fill out the Friends of Forsyth survey. Then we sent out our own survey to them so that we actually could see what our own members were thinking. And there was kind of an even split. Some people loved the plan, some people hated the plan, some people were sort of in between. And that was basically evenly split between our members. But then when you look at the comments section, so we just kind of gave a blank section, like, you know, tell us what you think.
Let it rip.
And one of the things that did come up immediately was traffic calming, more parking, don't put parking in the park, and we need to get the bikes out of Forsyth Park. So the obvious solution to that, as we've all already said, or what seems obvious to many of us, is making Whitaker and Drayton one lane with a bike lane and a parking lane. What's incredible to me is if you look at traffic counts, if you look at Whitaker and Drayton as one street, it's 4 lanes wide, has 4 traffic lanes between those 2 streets, and carries as much traffic on an average day as Liberty Street does in 2 lanes. So that tells you it has literally twice as much capacity as a street that it needs to have. And that's what leads to the speeding. It just isn't a good use of city resources. You know, any business owner will tell you that they want more parking near their business. They want cars to drive more slowly past their business so that the cars can see their businesses there. And studies have shown that people who arrive at a business by bicycle actually spend more at that business. So it's kind of the ideal customer you want, the guy who shows up on his bicycle at your front door. So to me, cutting the width of Whitaker and Drayton in half for cars and dedicating the other half of that space for a better use seems like an easy thing to do. So the DNA is supporting at least doing, let's encourage a trial run of something to, you know, it isn't that hard to even temporarily paint some stripes, paint some parking spaces, and test this out. You know, we've paid for that pavement. Now let's see if we can make that pavement more profitable for the neighboring landowners. The idea of adding, because there are too many people. I've been here 25 years. My first apartment was right off the park when I first moved here. The first groceries I bought at Brighter Day Natural Food Store. God bless them, they're still there, twice the size they were before. But Forsyth Park is much heavier used now than it was before. So we're going to start having conflicts and having all these we only have 30 acres to play with. And if we're going to try to fit all these things in the park, we're going to start having conflicts. So it just seems better to put the things in the park that really make sense to have in the park and remove some uses from the park, which to me seems like parking doesn't belong in the park and bicycles don't belong in the park. And I'm someone who bicycles downtown. We can't remove bicycles from the park unless we come up with a permanent solution for them.
Excellent. I want to remind everyone and maybe discuss for a minute the Price Street changes that went down not too terribly long ago, and there was a significant, negative perception of doing that. And by and large, now that it's done for the last 3 or 4 years, I guess, it's been a huge success. Even the detractors have said, yeah, this isn't as bad as I thought. This worked out well. We gained a dedicated bicycle lane. We slowed the traffic a little bit. We eliminated all those crazy, left-hand turns from the right lane and vice versa. And we gained parking. I own a couple of properties right over there off of Price and Gwinnett. And I saw it happen. It was a huge improvement. So I think it's a good case for it can be done, and it can be done successfully. Anybody want to?
I would point out on Price, property values also went up. And after the conversion of that street, a lot of the vacant infill lots they're now built with new condominiums, apartments, and townhouses. And intangible things that you don't attach money to, like quality of life and safety, all increase because of that redesign. And it also makes a much safer and faster route for bicyclists heading south. So those are all things that would accrue to Drayton and Whitaker.
Excellent point. Thank you. Anyone else? Yeah, Matthew.
Well, I would just say I'm working with a client redeveloping a historic building on Drayton Street, and their building's been hit by cars over 30 times. The same building over and over again. That doesn't make sense. And what do you expect a homeowner to do? Keep remodeling that building? No, the building sits there boarded up. Because who would spend the money to fix up a building when it's been hit by cars 30 times? It doesn't make sense.
Gotcha. Also, let me toss this idea over to the Friends of Forsyth. You guys are, you have incredible standing in the community. You're hearing, setting aside the nuances of the timeline for the master plan implementation and the nuances of it, this overarching issue of street redesign, is that something the organization could consider bringing into your plan? Have you guys thought about that? Or you just want to let that be a traffic engineering issue? Sorry.
Well, I'll jump in here. I'm
Sure.
sure Meb and Melinda may have some comments as well. I grew up a block away from Forsyth Park. My mother still lives in the house I grew up in, as a matter of fact, third owner of an 1880s home. Drayton and Whitaker have been an issue my whole life in Savannah. And to me, it's a relic of, luckily, a bygone era when there were those who felt that they needed a speedway to get into downtown to work and then get home out of the downtown area as quickly as possible. We are in full support of Drayton and Whitaker being restored, changed, made more pedestrian friendly, more bicycle friendly, and adding parking. And I know as a citizen, I lobbied hard in the last administration for this. When this project started, our club actually approached the administration that was then in place and asked about addressing this issue in the scope of work. And we're told that it was not appropriate and it was basically a non-starter. Before we pulled the trigger on hiring a planning firm, we reapproached about this exact thing. And we're told the same thing, that it was a traffic and engineering nightmare, that there was not support for making that change.
Eleanor, let me ask you, was that, to clarify, was the time frame you're talking about the current administration or the prior administration?
It was a couple of years ago.
Okay, prior administration, the Deloach administration.
So, and so we moved forward with the scope of work being just within the park, looking at ingress and egress to and from the park. And you'll see they're not plans, in the concept drawing video that is on the homepage of the website, there are some circulation recommendations with tables in the streets that are structured such that they would absolutely slow the traffic down. Is that the ideal scenario? Absolutely not. We would absolutely like to see this issue addressed. In the interim, things tend to move slowly in Savannah. And if this is something that's going to take many years to implement, it's easy to paint a line and put some cones down, but it's not so easy necessarily, based on what we've been told, to execute this change. So these tables may be an interim step while the traffic and engineering gets figured out, and then those tables can be removed. But for the interim, it's a much safer way for pedestrians, people in wheelchairs, people with strollers, to get from one side, to and into the park. So that's what the recommendation of the master planning team is at this time, for that reason.
Well, that's great to hear that we kind of have consensus on that. I know that your former Representative Bill Durrance was a big proponent and fought really hard to get this street redesign going. I watched 2 of your Zoom, of your 6, and I was struck by the comment that the city engineering department won't allow this to happen. And I bristled at that because I don't think the city charter anywhere says that the street engineering department sets policy. They follow policy. setting policy is Keisha Gibson Carter and the other 8 representatives' job. So, you know, I may be oversimplifying here, but I'm sure your current representative, Dietrich Leggett, is going to be responsive to this consensus. And it would take 5 votes on council to make this happen. And I think all of us at this point would welcome that. Is there anyone that wouldn't or want to comment? Keisha, do you have, you making notes and thinking?
Hello, Better Savannah. Thank
Hello.
you so much for this invitation. Hello, friends of Forsyth Park, and hello to the intrepid men of our various neighborhood associations in that corridor. Thank you so much for having me tonight. Listen, this is refreshing. This is what our democratic government is all about. This is what peacefulness and understanding and consensus building is all about. From the very beginning of our time on council, in as much as I can remember, Friends of Forsyth have been connecting with us, lobbying us to essentially get a greater understanding of this master plan and foster buy-in for it. Initially, I was excited about it, and I was more excited because there were indicators that spoke to the fact that you had put forth great intentions to make certain that there was buy-in among residents from all over Savannah. However, I attended a neighborhood association meeting with the Victorian neighborhood and learned that there was some concern as we have charted the course a little bit. And so, in as much as I can understand from what I'm hearing, I think while everybody's thoughts and desires for the park, whether they think we should do anything with it or not, I personally think that this has fostered an opportunity for us to fall in love with Forsyth Park all over again. I don't know that there's been as much attention on it as it is now. So that's a good thing. In the midst of it all, we have also increased our vocabulary with all the architectural buzzwords we've learned. So I'm grateful for that as well. But I think with the rollout of the various designs, there was a little bit of missed opportunity there to increase or strengthen the level of participation and communication where the residents were concerned. So I think when they saw what appeared to be the finished product, there was a little bit of sticker shock, if you will. And so here we are now, putting a pin in it. And this is a good place to be. And so just so you know, as your Alderwoman at large for Post 1, I am most concerned with 3 main factors here. One, first and foremost, is the safety issues on Broughton and Drayton. In as much as we have been talking about the master plan, I have been getting a number of complaints and calls and communication related to speed, accidents, and other safety issues in the corridors of Drayton Street and Whitaker Street. I know what has been stated about the fact that the approach to rectifying those pieces are separate from the master plan. I don't think it makes sense, and I think it would be disingenuous in the face of the public for us to focus on a master plan without first giving primary priority issue to those safety pieces. Second for me, and I want to remind you all, someone mentioned it today, about the influx in tourism that is projected for Savannah, not to mention what we have already experienced. And speaking of tourism, as you all know, we had a very contested issue with the hotel motel tax. And I was one of those advocates who actually advocated for funds when we talked about $20 million going to River Street. I didn't think that we were above at least dividing that money for Forsyth Park. After all, we have just as many visitors for that park. It's a wedding destination. I'm sure SCAD uses the Forsyth Park as a backdrop when they have students visiting in terms of them going to their university. So we want to make sure that you are cognizant of the fact that myself, and I'm just speaking for me, my primary concern is poverty in this community, crime, and affordable housing. And so as we approach our budget, when it comes to items like this, that's my priority. So it will be my hope that via SPLOST funds and possibly money from a hotel motel tax would actually fund this. I just want to put that out there right now, okay? And then I want to bring your attention to the fact that we still have this palette of the red cup zone, right? Again, my concern is public health and safety. If we have allowed the Savannah College of Art and Design to take over a multi-level complex that's slated for students, those students potentially will be drinking from those red cups openly as they travel the corridors of Forsyth Park and the surrounding streets. We know that alcohol plays a pervasive role in the commission and facilitation of sexual assault, primarily among college students. In addition, we are rolling out pieces related to responsible alcohol consumption. And so in the course of making those plans, we also see increased numbers where underage drinking is concerned, as well as driving under the influence. So we want to be cognizant of those issues as we go forth with this plan. I think there's a lot that we can sort of tackle or pay attention to at the same time. And finally, again, it's the cost of the master plan. Eleanor, I don't know that we were able to get a sticker price for it because we were still very much in the planning phase, but I would like to know if you all have a projected number for what this is going to cost. And I want to continuously encourage this type of collaboration and communication so that we can have ultimate buy-in. I had the opportunity to attend an MPC meeting today, just prior to this Zoom, with the Liberty City neighborhood residents who too just came together with the Boys and Girls Club to discuss how they could approach these pieces with more harmony. So I want to thank you, Better Savannah, for this platform tonight. And Meb, I am remiss because I was supposed to bring us together before now on my show, and hopefully we'll get a chance to do that. But I dedicated the whole month of April to Sexual Assault Awareness Month. So.
Alderwoman Carter, I just want to follow up with a quick question because seems to be one of the largest issues. Is it possible from your conversations with colleagues that the streets can be a prerequisite for any city approval, you know, despite what traffic engineering has said to various organizations represented here?
Well, anything is possible, right? It just depends on if it's the political will of council to do so. I would imagine that the intelligence level of members of council is just where mine is, and it just makes sense. It's just not very smart to give consideration to a master plan like this without first giving consideration to responding to the many citizens who just this administration and previous administrations have acknowledged. And then if we look at police reports with regard to speeding tickets and car accidents, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to see that this should definitely be primary.
Okay, this is great that, you know, we're all getting along so well and agreeing on so many things. I just want to point out to kind of put a tack on this safety issue of the streets. Drayton Street had 13 people hit and 9 injured in the period between 2011 and 2015. On Whitaker Street, there were 8 pedestrians hit and 7 sustained injuries. So anyway, where do we go from this point to try to incorporate street redesign? And anyone want to suggest a pathway forward? Ryan?
So, John, I think you might like to have us on your show later this summer when we have more of a plan, but just to drop a little hint what we're working towards, and this is several neighborhood associations along the corridor and beyond, including in Ardsley Park, that may support this. But we would like to propose a pilot where we use the paint and the barrels, but something more aesthetically pleasing, more of a thoughtful pop-up that shows people what this could be like. as a way to show Savannahans that this could work, but especially to build buy-in and trust with traffic engineers who might be skeptical. So an initial step that we really hope and feel like that would lead to these long-term changes, given the funding opportunity and the political will, like Alderwoman Gibson Carter said. So that's a plan that's coming. Thanks to Matthew Hallett for kind of prompting that. Brad Baugh on our VNA board had the idea to do a pop-up. Chris Shomo is on board, TSNA is on board. And we think that we may even have the support from the South Side and from Alderman Colombo to do something like that. So big things are coming. Now I've said it, Matthew, we got to follow up with it. So that, yeah, there's motions towards kind of doing something more proactive with Drayton and Whitaker.
And I would be in full support of that, Ryan. And I just want to acknowledge, John, as you were rambling off those statistics, I don't know where, I think I hit my head in the accident actually, so I don't remember. But my daughter and I were actually T-boned at, what's that, Price Street, not Price Street, Whitaker and my blood sugar's low. What's the street in front of Brighter Day?
Park
Avenue. And it was not myself nor the driver were going at a high rate of speed, but the impact nearly totaled my car. And that was without speeding. And my daughter sustained a hairline fracture in her arm sitting in the middle of the back seat. So it's a serious matter. And so I would definitely be a proponent for that.
Well, thank you, Ryan, you're always welcome to come back and be a guest or put together another panel to continue discussing this. I think you have a strong base on council for this. I'm sorry the last administration wasn't able to make it happen, but this administration seems to be an administration of action.
That's why we took them out.
Okay. It's one reason they aren't there, to Chuck's point. So I'd like to hear from the Friends of Forsyth. We've kind of overrun you with street design conversation. What as we come towards the close of the show, what all do you have to share with us about this discussion and future discussions?
I guess I'll jump in first, and I know Meb will have some thoughts as well. First and foremost, thank you for this forum. And I think this is indicative of, quite honestly, what our goal has been from the very beginning of this process, is to have a robust community engagement process. I think Meb mentioned earlier, we made a tremendous financial commitment in this plan. Almost 25% of the budget for this project actually is on community engagement, because we felt so strongly about it. And what's going on now within the community and on this call is exactly, to our feeling, what should be happening, because these design concepts are not plans. They are really the opportunity to begin a conversation with the community based on their ideas that they shared with us during the first survey period, and getting the information back on what the community likes, what it doesn't like, is what this is all about. So as I said, this is the beginning, and the next step for us is to compile all of the rich data that we've received during the month of April, and to bring that back out to the community with an actual draft plan. But in the interim, we hope to have many rich conversations with the neighborhood associations and other organizations. That's always been part of our process plan. We are fully on board with any discussions about Whitaker and Drayton. And Ryan, it's good to hear about this pilot discussion that's going on. We would love to be a part of that as well, if you'll have us. And continue to move forward. I think to what Ryan said at the beginning of the call, we're all on the same page. We all love Forsyth Park. The community loves Forsyth Park. And all of this passion that's come forward during this process is terrific. And we just want to continue to hold that thought and keep the conversations positive and come together and create a great plan that will steward the park for the next 50 years.
Meb?
Ditto. But
Ditto?
also, yes, absolutely ditto to all of that. And yes, this is just a lot of passion and love for the space is what we're seeing. And that's understandable. And I would, with regard to Drayton and Whitaker, yes, as Eleanor said, we are in 100% agreement with all the comments that have been made here. And when we sat down with our design team in the beginning, they said, well, what are we going to do about this problem?
Right.
And we had to say, this is not within our scope of work, due to the feedback that we've received from city staff. So that's where it is now. It's not in our scope of work. So it's not in the budget right now that's, to produce any sort of, plans or anything with those sorts of details, but that we're focusing on the park, but that doesn't mean that changes on Drayton and Whitaker won't affect that ultimate plan. So we like where this is going.
Well, you guys,
thank you again for having us tonight, because we really love to have these productive discussions. It's really
yeah. I just want to sneak one more question into them, John, because I think I hear compromise. I hear willingness to work with many different groups. Are we to expect these types of changes in the forthcoming plan? And then I guess a further speculative question: if they're not incorporated into this next round of plans that are going to be released next month, what's your reaction going to be to unified opposition from groups that are represented here and groups like ours?
I'm not sure I totally understand the question. Are you asking if the changes to Drayton and Whitaker aren't included in our next step?
I think that's a non-negotiable issue for the groups represented here. I think groups that like ours that are looking at this. I am not a designer or a planner. I agree with a couple of the things I see in the plans, but I think that in order for the city to sign off on a long-range plan at all, if those redesigns are not a part of that long-term plan, I think it's hard for us to communicate to our elected officials that we want them to support it, right? So I think that's the framework I'm looking at, is that if these incorporations about the streets are not going to be part of this next round of designs, I just think I'm finding it hard to go to the at-large alderwoman or to do Second District Alderman Dietrich Leggett, who represents this area, and say, yeah, go ahead and sign off on that 50-year plan, even if it's fluid and open to interpretation and can change, without first addressing this. And the reason I saw this in the comments is because it's the right leverage point having to do with the park. It's an issue having to do with the park. This is an issue having to do with the park. This has to be addressed in order to, I believe, gain majority consensus on council, or at least a healthy majority on council.
Well, Chuck, to that point, I think the onus is actually on the council. I don't think the garden club can decide that. Again, it goes back to the political will. I mean, tomorrow we could make this happen, right? But we just have to have the will to do so. I am, again, just most concerned as we proceed. I'm happy that we can end on a high note, but I still know that there are major issues related to the current designs. And so what I want to make sure of, Meb and Eleanor, is that the neighborhood associations around the corridor of Forsyth Park, in addition to the greater voices of Savannah, we want to make sure that we create a way where there is communication in tandem to the rollout of what this plan looks like, so that there's not this big shock, right? I think one of the things I forgot to mention was the athletic associations that use the park for the Little League football practices. They're concerned that that space seems to be totally gone now. So I think that's your greater responsibility. The responsibility of the streets and public safety and traffic, that is the responsibility of the council. And as I stated, we could take care of that tomorrow if we had the political will to do so. And whatever that looks like, you can count on me supporting the pieces that Ryan demonstrated that are already in motion, and helping to facilitate that. But also I'm hopeful that with the arrival of a new city manager soon, I hope, you know, this is something that we could have a fresh set of eyes marry the nostalgia that we have for the park and come to some good decision making here.
I just want to give Melinda or Meb a chance to respond as well before we close out.
Okay, thank you. And I think, thank you, Alderwoman, for your words about this being a council issue, really, because we were, you know, directed by the city. We're working in partnership with them, but we were directed by the city not to include this in our plan. So before we, we ask our, team to invest time, our money, and all that into anything with regard to Drayton and Whitaker, I think that we need to have a marching order from our elected officials that this is something that they want to see done. And I certainly can understand that this is creating some major opinions and opposition. One of the major reasons for opposition is Drayton and Whitaker, but we, as a club, as Friends of Forsyth, we've been tasked with working within the park. So we're going to need probably a little more support from the city for moving outside the park. And also, Alderwoman, thank you for your comments and suggestions about improving our outreach for the next phase. We'll definitely be working on that. And I need to get the name of the contacts for the youth athletic folks that we've been having a hard time getting that play in the park. So I'll get into contact with you. Thank you.
I'm gonna.
Is there a point when we're going to incorporate maybe a focus group or question and answer directly with the public to get live one-on-one question and answer to allow the public to ask questions rather than submitting, a survey question, but to engage and hear where they're coming from?
Thank you for that question. Actually, the initial community engagement plan was very much about us being physically out in the community and holding public meetings face to face, but obviously the last year that's just not been possible. So we completely redesigned everything to integrate as many feedback tools as possible, including the 5 meetings that were just held, where there was very robust Q&A. We've also been receiving lots of emails that we've replied to offline through the Friends of Forsyth contact form, and also all on social media. We are really hopeful, Lord willing, that when the actual first draft plan comes out, because what is out there now is not a plan, but when the first plan is created, that we are able to have a face-to-face community meeting. We would love that. It just hasn't been realistic. We have been face-to-face in very, very small groups that have invited us to come and make presentations and do a Q&A. We're very open to that now. So we're happy to go and present and speak and ask questions and hear feedback from whoever would like to reach out to us.
Great, Eleanor. I want to kind of bring us almost to the end. And this is almost a Camp David situation here. My best hope here from what I've heard tonight and what I've learned is the Friends of Forsyth is going to continue on their track and their course and their mission to refine the plan and continue to take input. We all know it's a sketch, not a blueprint at this point. This is good. I think you've heard tonight from one elected official that you have the ears of council on this. It's not the former council. The political will is there to make this happen. And my hope is that the continued collaboration will bring us to a point where the Garden Club and the Friends of Forsyth will actively expand their effort to include that street component, because look at all the goodwill and support that will flow your way by taking that extra dimension into account in your path forward. So that's my hope. I can't thank all of you enough for being honest and dedicating your time to this discussion. Better Savannah is here to advocate for good public policy. Anytime we want to do this again, we're happy to arrange it. So Chuck, do you want to preview our next show and have any final comments? I guess Chuck is offline right now. Do any of our panelists have any final comments? Otherwise, we're going to take us out and go about our night. Okay. Thank you, everyone, so much for your time and effort. Chuck, you're back. Next week's show, real quick, what do we got?
I think we're doing Pops on Politics is our guest next week. Right, Carrie? Am I wrong about that?
Yeah.
Okay, I am right about that. All right. So next week we'll have Pops on Politics, Mrs. Lindsay Groberstein and friends, another little panel show. My dog's missing, barking and stuff. So go ahead and take us out.
Okay. Again, many thanks. Love you all. Thanks for your hard work on this subject. And together, we'll make this happen.
Thanks for having us, John.
My pleasure.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.